I made 41,000 US dollars net revenue after Steam's 30% cut on my first commercial indie game, Only Way Is Down, which is a rage platformer priced at $9.99. I released my game on Steam on the 1st of April 2025, so around 10 months ago at this point. I had 17,821 wishlists on launch day, and I've sold 8,656 copies, excluding returns, and I've got 113 reviews with a total score of 61%. I've had 1,712 copies returned to date, so 16.5% of total purchases. The game took around a year to make over the course of a year and a half, as I was also working on other projects during that time. I localized my game in 29 languages. The top 5 countries for copies sold have been USA, Russia, Japan, Germany and UK in that order, although the top 5 countries for net revenue were USA, Japan, Russia, Germany and UK in that order, due to regional pricing on the game, and I used Steam's default regional pricing. I also made the game playable on both Xbox and PlayStation controllers and made it Steam Deck compatible. I currently have 33,044 wishlists and I'm selling roughly 10 copies a day, although this is very variable due to Steam sales or the games being played by content creators, and this will certainly decrease on average as time goes on. I started posting about my game on social media at the start of May 2024 and had a Steam page set up at that point so I could start getting wishlists. I released a demo of my game on June 2024 over Steam Next Fest, which managed to get my game around 4,100 wishlists. I left my demo up on Steam until a few weeks before release, which allowed my game to be covered by quite a few big YouTubers, including Keyin.
Hello everybody, I'm kindly Keyin, and I am a cat.
Yub.
Hey, what's up?
Can I get back home?
And Sam Tabor.
It kind of looks like it's only up, except you go the opposite way.
I posted a fair bit to social media after launching my Steam page, right up until the time I launched the game, including to TikTok, Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, Threads and Blue Sky, and saw by far the most success with Reddit, TikTok and YouTube, in that order. I did create another post on Reddit covering my marketing up until 6 months prior to launch, which goes into a bit more detail for that period. I spent around $5,000 on advertising in total, with the vast majority being prior to launch, having only spent around $200 post-launch. Prior to launch, I spent roughly $4,000 on a Keymailer campaign, around $700 on Reddit ads, and around $100 on TikTok ads. I got around 12,000 clicks for my Reddit ads, so an average cost per click of 5 cents, but that only converted to 237 wishlists, so an average cost per wishlist of $2.95, which isn't great, and that's mostly because I pretty much just set it up and then just left it. I didn't optimize it as I was too busy with the other aspects of releasing a game. For TikTok, I spent around $100 on 100,000 views for one of my videos. This yielded extremely low engagement compared to a similar post I had on TikTok, which had an organic 100,000 views. I read later that people suggested turning off Pangle on TikTok, as otherwise ads are run across third-party apps and games, and that often has a huge amount of bot traffic. As the promotion did so bad on TikTok, I didn't use it again. For the $4,000 I spent at Keymailer, I got a video masthead ad package and paid more for it to be featured, which meant the video always appeared first on the Discover Games page, as typically the ad would be in random rotation with 4 other ads. This package also had a top ad slot on the browse page and allowed for influencer outreach to 1,500 contacts and press blast to 1,500 contacts, press newsletter, an animated social ad, and campaign assistance from Partner. The masthead ad went live 2 weeks prior to launch and was live for 1 week. If I remember correctly, I did get around 3,000 to 4,000 requests, although the vast majority were from very small creators with less than 1,000 subscribers, and on average low video or stream views. Initially prior to release, I was only providing keys to large creators with greater than 50,000 subscribers or greater than 10,000 views. But as time went on, I slowly started providing keys to people with lesser subscribers or average view counts. I did also use the press blast, but only small press websites picked up the game. The reviews were a bit of a mixed bag, some good, some bad. Some reviewers barely played the game, if not at all. I'm guessing using AI to write the reviews, as they'd leave reviews with things which weren't true, such as the game had microtransactions, which it didn't. I think the genre of the game probably didn't help either, as I think a lot of reviewers do not like rage games, as they're often seen as low effort games. I also did influencer outreach. A few larger streamers, YouTubers picked it up, but the vast majority of people who accepted the offers were smaller content creators. I did get around 500,000-600,000 views total from YouTube from all the videos created, and I think around 50 to 100,000 views from streamers on Twitch, which is really good, although most of those creators were non-English speaking creators. Fortunately, it's still difficult to get really large content creators to play your game through Keymailer, as although they may be exposed to your game through it, they will also be exposed to thousands of other games, and I'm sure the large creators get a huge amount of offers, so your game will be lost among the thousands of offers they get. Of course though, the game itself and the marketing of that is also a massive factor. All in all, I do think it was worth the value, as paying for the amount of views I got via the campaign would have cost a lot more, and also it wouldn't have been as well spread across different languages. It's very difficult to assess exactly how many wishlists and sales the Keymailer campaign brought in. My wishlist certainly increased significantly during that period, but this is also due to the increased visibility on Steam and my other social media marketing. I'd say the launch itself was fairly successful. I did a 20% launch discount for the first week. I managed to sell 1,248 copies on the first day, so a total of $8,232 gross revenue, and 3,091 copies in the first week for a total of $19,851 gross revenue, and then 4,810 copies sold in the first month for a total of $35,862 gross revenue, so almost half of the gross revenue I've made to date. The game started with a relatively good review score of 75%, but dropped to 62% after the first month. This relatively low score has likely impacted sales due to the many mixed reviews I got. The main issues mentioned in the reviews were the difficulty of the game and the controls. The game is a rage game, so it is meant to be very difficult and punishing. However, even still, it's probably way too hard.
3, 2, 1, jump! This is the hardest game of all time.
I did compromise a fair bit on the difficulty, adding a mode with unlimited lives, adding in save points, and later increasing the amount of save points. But I did want the game to be a real challenge and an achievement to complete. I was fairly stubborn regarding the difficulty though, and I didn't want to compromise too much on my vision for the game and make it easy. In retrospect, I think for sure making it easier would have helped make the game more successful. The other main issue mentioned in negative reviews were the controls. While admittedly the turning is a bit slow, it's intentionally like this to make turning more precise and make it harder to turn too quickly and make mistakes. The controls in general I do not think are bad, although I am of course biased. I think the difficulty in the controls essentially comes down to the difficulty of the game, in that as the challenges are so hard and the precision required is extremely high, this in turn makes the control needed to have that level of precision very hard. A big issue which impacted these reviews and in turn the sales was my marketing. Unfortunately, prior to launch I had focused on marketing as broadly as possible, rather than focusing on players who like rage games specifically. I had thought that even players who didn't like rage games, but like cats, might enjoy the game, but in the end, I think this led to a lot of negative reviews, which ended up hurting sales. I think most players who came across the marketing and thought it would be a cute cat game did not enjoy the game, as it was far too difficult and frustrating for them. I think regardless of the marketing, this would have occurred to some extent, as it was a cat game, and a lot of people automatically assume it's going to be some cozy, cute game because there's a cat, which it definitely is not. Changing the animal would have made this clearer, but it made sense for the premise of the game that the cat fell asleep and got transported to the top of the building, and I also really like playing as a cat, and that was really the core aspect of the game I wanted to make. Another issue was that although I intended it as a rage game, the way the platforming was designed was more similar to a very difficult precision platformer like Super Meat Boy, in that most rage games there's a very long challenge with relatively easy platforming, but if you make one mistake you lose a lot of progress. Whereas in my game it's a long challenge, but most of the platforming is extremely difficult, but you won't lose much progress if you die, at least on the easiest setting. This likely impacted potential customers' views of the game, as some streamers would get stuck on a particular section and would just be constantly dying over and over and over in quick succession. And while funny at first, it would become boring for the viewers and for the streamers, and they'd eventually lose interest in the game. Whereas with more typical rage games, they may lose a lot of progress, but when they reach the same challenge again, they would likely complete it after a few tries, as the individual challenge isn't so difficult. In terms of the factors which help with the success, I would say the fact that it's a cat game is a big aspect, as that automatically attracts the attention of a lot of people.
Good kitty. Good kitty.
I think also the graphics, the setting and the premise all help to attract attention, as the cat starts on top of a skyscraper and you've got an expansive view over a city, which is quite an interesting, visually appealing game setting. The fact that it's also a rage game, which can be popular with content creators, and it's somewhat unique that you have to get to the bottom and has a semi-realistic premise, rather than the typical rage game concept of having to climb up random objects floating in the air. I think also the cat customization was a feature that attracted a fair amount of people. There's a lot of players like the ability to customize their characters, and I think the silliness of the game helped a bit, with ragdolling cats and chunky cats, as I think it can make for funny content. In retrospect, if I had to do it again, I'd make the game even easier and aim to make my marketing specifically for rage gamers to make it very clear what type of game it is. Also, I think if I'd added co-op support, that would have really helped with the popularity and sales, as that's always a feature which really helps sell games. However, I did want to have a short development life cycle and didn't really want to spend too much time on it. Perhaps I'll do it in a sequel further down the line. While I had hoped the game to do a bit better both financially and critically, I'm still very pleased with how it turned out. Solo game development at this point won't be able to support me as a full-time job, but for my first release I think it's a decent start. Overall, I'm really proud of what I produced and surprised how well it came out in the end. I was a bit apprehensive at launch, thinking there would be a ton of problems, but it went surprisingly well. There was quite a lot of minor bugs, but overall it went pretty smoothly.
Pretty good.
With nothing game breaking. I also made a couple of devlogs about the game development side of Only Way Is Down, so you can check those out if you're interested in more of a technical aspect of making the game. I'll also make my Tableau workbook available, so if people want to download the free Tableau public edition and add their own CSV files from Steam into it and see what their games look like in the dashboard, they can do that. I'm currently working on porting Only Way Is Down to Xbox, and also working on a few projects which I'll release details of in the coming months. Please like and subscribe if you like the content. Cheers.